那麼我們在進入今天的話題之前，我要非常感謝不當黨產委員會贊助這一系列的影片，有你們的幫助，我才有辦法到各黨時刻做一些介紹給我的台灣觀眾，讓台灣人更加的了解波蘭的轉型之路。
With the political agenda, what was discussed, what was established was, among other things, first semi-free elections in Poland in June 4th, 1989. And there was actually a trick by the communists because the roundtable agreements finished on April 28th. So there was a really short time to prepare these elections. And before that, we had a lower chamber of the parliament with 460 seats, and you could choose the members of the parliament from 460 candidates. So that wasn't a really election. For these 1989 elections, those 300 seats were kind of secured for the Communist Party, but 160 seats were given for popular vote. And to surprise of actually everybody, all 160 seats were won by the Solidarność camp. And the scale of this victory also showed the communist authorities that their time has come. So this is why, having a majority in the parliament, the communist authorities agreed to give the seat of the prime minister to Tadeusz Mazowiecki, who was the first non-communist prime minister after 1945. And that started a very rapid and very actually spontaneous change in Polish society, also economics. And there are kind of more academic concepts showing that if you have a strong authoritarian rule, but for some reasons it has to change, mostly when the impulses come from the outside, like they need loans or they need some other kind of support, but the opposition is weak, then these countries undergo a process of democratization, like Spain after General Franco. On the other side, you have situations like it was in Romania, where you have very weak authoritarian rule, and suddenly there is a huge explosion of grassroots activities with a very strong opposition that usually ends up in kind of violent
overthrow of the government.
Yes, kind of a revolution almost. Which also leads to many conflicts later, and as I said, it's quite violent, so it's not a scenario that you would desire. But in Poland, the situation was that the communist authorities were weak and getting weaker, but also the opposition wasn't strong enough. So that's why you have something called the disposition, where both sides sit down at the table. In the Polish case, round table. In the Hungarian case, it was a triangular table, and they negotiate a smooth transition of power and a smooth, more or less, economic reforms. And that happened in Poland.
对脱離威权的波蘭有2個關鍵的轉型方向，我們就是從立法的角度來看。第一，就是國營企業民營化的相關法律，其中包含1990年國有企業私有化法律，還有1996年的國有企業商業化與私有化的法律。第二呢，就是巴爾蔡羅維奇的經濟轉型改革，它的計劃呢，就是包含了如下的法案：國有公司內部金融經濟法，允許了國有企業宣布破產，取消了對所有國有企業的存在的保證。無論其財務業績和生產的效率如何，都可以對無利可圖的企業進行破產程序。第二就是銀行法，禁止國家中央銀行為國家預算赤字融資，廢除了對國有企業信貸的優惠法。再來就是工資過度上漲徵稅法，限制國有企業的工資增長，以限制惡性通貨膨脹。再來就是新稅收規則法，對所有公司實施共同稅收，並且取消了以前可以通過行政的決定對私營公司徵收特別稅。接下來就是外國投資者經濟活動法，允許外國公司和私人在波蘭投資，並將其利潤出到國外。外幣法引入自羅體的內部可兌換性，並廢除了國際貿易中的國家壟斷。還有關稅法為所有公司制定了同一個關稅稅率。就業法規範了失業機構指責。很有趣的是說，有了就業法之後，才正式認可失業的存在。最後就是國有企業解僱人員法，保護國有企業的工人不被大量解僱。 還有保障失業補助金跟遣散費。
How to privatize the banking sector.
Yeah.
So in the early 90s, what happened was that the state-owned banking sector was divided regionally, and new banks were established regionally as well. So in Silesian part, you had one bank, and close to the seaside, you had another bank, etc., etc. These, of course, later were bought by big international businesses, and now there's actually almost no local banks anymore. They're mostly owned by multinational companies.
Yeah, like your European bigger banks.
Yeah, or not only European actually. It was a very, very tempting market. I mean, very profitable. And these challenges were happening to almost every branch of the industry. And at the same time, there was a huge push to establish your own small business. I kind of remember those times, and I remember many of my neighbors in my neighborhood opened shops in their garage or in their backyard, importing goods from Germany, mostly Germany, that were not available before in Poland. So they could sell like sweets or like washing powder that actually washed something, etc. And people were encouraged to do that. And if you look at popular culture from that time, so you could see that there were like many TV series encouraging people to set up their own businesses, encouraging people to take all the matters in their own hands, because well, that's how you could make some money, or even big money. Open, I don't know, some sort of a post-communist food truck. If you had a camper, you could actually
sell zapiekanka. Like
exactly, or French fries, and then you could sell them, and people wanted to go out and eat something, so you could actually make quite good money. And still at that time there were not that many restrictions like health sanitarian restrictions, etc. Income tax was introduced in 1991, as I remember. And so it was easy to set up your own business, and that actually was also helping the authorities, because it pushed away some of the challenges from the authorities and moved it to the society level.
波兰90年代透过这些改革，才逐渐建立起具有竞争力的市场经济，国有企业也逐渐民营化，不再受党政的影响。那么，哥丹斯克造船厂就是这样子的一个案例。下一集我将会带大家看一下，在共产主义退出波兰历史舞台之后，波兰又发生了哪一些令人惊艳的转变。
And this mental change around 1989 was a big shock to some people. Suddenly it turned out that there's no job, and since there's no job, there's no income, and the state is not helping you anymore. The state is not giving you money, it's not providing you with food, and you end up being really, really poor, which of course led to a lot of protests, conflicts, etc. So that was a big challenge that actually was about 10% of the population faced. And there were some attempts to overcome this situation, but it wasn't on the spot. It wasn't an instant reaction. That was also a big problem, which gave quite a lot of political fuel to populist parties, and which led to another round of political conflict. But this situation of dividing the budget, it was a bit easier in Poland than elsewhere, because Poland was a monoparty authoritarian rule, but there was no like single dictator who collected money for him or herself. It was owned by the party. So the Polish Communist Party was disbanded in 1989, and on the basis of it was to form a new social democratic party that inherited some of the wealth, but not all of it. And that was a big discussion, which part and how much of the wealth should be given. It was not actually about cash, it was mostly about real estate. Because of course the
party
communist
offices,
party offices centrally located in biggest cities. But to show you how spontaneous the situation was, many of the provincial party headquarters in big cities were actually occupied in 1989 by students, which were throwing out party officials. but because the students occupied it, they remained. And in many of these buildings, universities took them over. So new departments were established because of that. And as you can see, that was a very spontaneous action going on. That you have a group of students occupying a building, they don't want to leave, and at some point, university takes it over as a way to calm the situation down. And that happened with actually many things that previously belonged to the Communist Party. So it wasn't exactly planned, it wasn't exactly thought through, it was very much a spontaneous process. And with other things also was a spontaneous. One of the leading now Polish newspapers, Gazeta Wyborcza, was established as an electoral bulletin for the opposition before the 1989 elections. But it remained and is still operating until today.
所以这个本土化的意识已经逐渐成熟，对于党国不分的威权、政治宣传、党国体制的全貌也有一定程度的了解，所以对于厘清历史的真相的态度也越来越明朗跟开放。随着国际环境的开放，台湾人也比過去有更多的機會認識1990年代以來同樣是走出獨裁專制體制的其他國家的過程的全貌。